Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5. We're at a whole handful now, so that's pretty dope. And I hope everyone had a fun, awesome, and safe Halloween. Unfortunately, I was unable to do anything because, like you may hear, I got pretty crazy sick Wednesday night, and I'm just now getting over it. And still got a pretty gnarly cough, and not getting much sleep, but, you know, whatever, who needs sleep, right? But I was pretty bummed that I didn't get to do anything for Halloween because I had a crazy good costume that I thought of way earlier, and yeah, I thought of way earlier in the year, and I wanted to go as Larry Bird, and I thought it would have been perfect and hella funny because with those short shorts, and if I only grow out my mustache, the resemblance is pretty similar. So that was my plan for my costume Halloween costume. um, so maybe next year. But back to it. Stick around for Hawk Talk in a bit because I got a pretty bold proclamation that I believe will happen after this year. And real quick too, I'm watching the World Series game right now as I speak, and it's 1-1, top of the third. And for what it's worth, I still think Chicago is going to win, for a couple reasons. Well, first of all, I just had a couple friends move to Chicago, and I kind of hope they win because I want them to kind of be a part of that crazy celebration that would happen since they haven't won since 1908 or whatever it was, and have them end that long drought. And also just because Chicago, they won like 103 or 104 games or whatever it was, and by far the best team in the regular season, and that's 10 more than Cleveland won. And somehow Cleveland gets home field advantage. That's just the fact that it's determined through the All-Star game, and who wins the All-Star game, the AL or the NL. It's just goofy as hell to me. It makes zero sense. So I think Chicago deserves the home field advantage, and they deserve to win. Not saying Cleveland doesn't deserve to win because they've gone through a long drought, but Chicago definitely needs to win, and just kind of put an end to that weird, goofy all-star game determination. How the home field advantage? It's kind of a mess, but So something happened Sunday that only happens once a year, and it made me even more stoked than any normal Sunday. You may be familiar with like the summer equinox on June 21st and the winter equinox coming up on December 21st, but there's another equinox that happens that you may not know of, and it's a little more irregular than like seasonal equinoxes, but it's the sports equinox. And that happened this last Sunday. First of all, I count NASCAR as a professional sport. So, all 5 professional sports, NASCAR, NFL, NBA, MLB, and hockey, the NHL, they all had an event on the same day. It was so awesome. I was just so happy to just be content, veg out on the couch, and watch all the events happening Sunday. So let's get right into it. So the race at Martinsville was the first round of the Elite 8 in the chase format, and it was a very entertaining race, just as Martinsville never lets us down in that regard. Jimmy Johnson rallied back from having a late ignition problem or fuel pickup problem or something weird. He said on the radio that he didn't even know exactly what happened, but after that crazy caution where it took like 20 laps or whatever to figure out the running order, he came from the back, I should say, and with a cycle of pit stops, and he held off Denny Hamlin, which him and Denny Hamlin had a great battle for a couple 5-6 laps that kind of determined the winner of the race. It was about winding down lap 40 or so, and they raced each other clean. It was very entertaining, but Jimmy got the pass on him and held him off for the win. So this locks Jimmy in for the final four going into Homestead in like 3 weeks or so, and a race and like a one race shootout for the championship. This is a big deal because it could be his 7th championship, and he can join the likes of only 2 other drivers to win 7, and that's Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt Sr., of course. It's a little unfair because if Dale was still alive and finished out his career, I have no doubt that he would have won 2 more at least. But, you know, it is what it is, and I would like to see him win a 7th. As controversial as some people make it, I'm always on this side of watching history and watching records be broken. So there is 7 other drivers now battling for the final 3 spots in the next 2 weeks, and those Stewart Haas boys are in big trouble. Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick, I think they're like 7th and 8th or 6th and 7th in the standings now, and well in the hole in points. And so they need a lot of help, or they just need a win. And with that being said, I do think that Kevin Harvick is going to sneak in, because if you look at the schedule, that last race cutoff is at Phoenix, and he's dominated Phoenix. And also just in the crunch time, frankly. And in this situation, I think he can win there again. He's won 5 out of the last 6 races there, and the oddball one that he didn't win, you know, guess what? He got 2nd. So he's got that place figured out, and he's got it on lock. Therefore, you know, my final 4 going into the last race is, you know, Jimmy Johnson, of course, Kevin Harvick, like I just pointed out. Denny Hamlin's going to be consistent these next 2 weeks. He's in a really good spot in 2nd place in the overall standing. So if he can just stay consistent with top 5s and top 10s, he'll be able to move in that top 4 going into Phoenix. And my 4th one is going to be Kyle Busch. I think it's going to be an intense race at Texas and Phoenix for Kyle Busch. He's going to be pretty quiet at both, but he's going to stay consistent and be a lock in that 4th spot going into Homestead. But you know, if you don't keep in touch with NASCAR, and if you don't watch the next 2 races and 3 races going into the championship round, don't worry, I'll keep you updated. Full show, because it's going to be so intense, so awesome. I can't wait. So the NBA season kind of kicked off last Wednesday as well, and so far it's been very entertaining as well. The Warriors, although they've rebounded since their first opening night embarrassing loss, they're like me this Halloween. They know what they want to be, but they're just missing a stable immune system. And what I mean by that is, like, they're gonna be missing a big man and size to really control the paint and really control the stability going forward. And I mean, I guarantee you it's gonna bite them in some pivotal games this season, all season long, really. And I'm not saying that they're gonna be like a bottom feeder or bottom seed team going into the playoffs, but I do think that that Kevin Durant acquisition isn't going to be the best thing for them if they have just stuck it out with that group that they had last season where they lost in the finals. They were one Draymond Green suspension game away from, you know, potentially winning it. I'm not refuting the fact that he should have been suspended, but they made a really good run. They won 73 games. NBA record. So if I don't know why they just didn't stick with that squad, honestly. And Kevin Durant, he's going to have to take on more of a role for the defense. many of my friends kind of know that I wasn't on board with this super team framework as that was advertised. And I mean, when you spread the floor out like that, where all five guys, all five positions are essentially shooters at the most part, you're giving up a lot of offensive rebounding possibilities, and your defensive rebounds are also going to diminish because there's no rim protector anymore, like Andrew Bogut or Harrison Barnes or Festus Ezeli. Harrison Barnes and Andrew Bogut played a much more valuable role to the Warriors on defense than what Kevin Durant brings, in my opinion. KD is a great defender, by all means, don't get me wrong, but he is going to be more exposed to getting into the foul trouble and guarding those more physical guys, because he's going to have to come down into the block and more in the paint to kind of guard those power forwards and sometimes even those centers, because who's going to guard them? Who's got the height? Draymond, he can guard 1 through 5, but he doesn't have the height to really contest centers at the rim. And so with KD kind of taking on that much more role, playing guys like more physical guys like Blake Griffin, Willie Cauley-Stein, DeMarcus Cousins, Julius Randle, Ed Davis in Portland, and like we've seen the opening night, Pau Gasol just took it to him little by little throughout the whole night. And just in that sense, that's just the Western Conference. I can go on with the Eastern Conference guys also, but those are the guys that he's going to be facing the most. And with the more defensive load near the basket, he's not really used to that. So it's going to be interesting to see how well he adapts and how far they go. I do think they'll still flirt with like 60 wins or so, plus or minus a few, but that's still going to put them in contention for like that second or third, maybe even the 4th seed, which they haven't really dealt with in their recent successful past. They've always really skyrocketed to the top and took advantage of unhealthy teams in the past. So it's going to be an interesting season for them, for sure. And talking about my MVP pick, LeBron came out strong with a triple-double, and he's looking healthier than ever. They're rolling out the gates 3-0, well, now 4-0, but quite impressive. And in the Eastern Conference Finals rematch the other night with Toronto, although Toronto did come back late in that 4th quarter, that was due to some goofy calls and misfortunate handles, some out-of-bounds plays that was questionable. And they had control pretty much the whole game, which was nice to see. They face off again in a week or so. So I'm interested to see how the Raptors respond, because the Cavs, they might just get them this time, because the Cavs, they have these next 2 or 3 games. Ooh, base hit. Sorry. Right. Oh! Alright, so these next couple games for the Cavs, pretty weak teams, honestly. So another team I've been pretty impressed with early in the season is the Trailblazers, and I knew going into the season that they would be a pretty good team, but I mean, Damian Lillard, he's been playing at an MVP type level, and the whole team really looks pretty great for the most part. They really look like they've already gelled together, and they have the framework of like a top seeded team come playoff time. Like I said before, I think they might get into that 4th seed, but I wouldn't be surprised if they can get any higher than that even, with the fall of San Antonio and Golden State. Like I think if that does come true, I wouldn't be surprised seeing them in like that 3rd or 2nd seed. And that would just help their playoff run astronomically. If I remember right, they got the 5th seed last year, so they're steadily improving. And like they say, Rome wasn't built in one day, and neither are championship teams. But unless your name is LeBron James, of course. Come on, bitch. Come here. Okay. Oh, hey, girl. Hey, girlie. Say hi. Say hi. Yeah. So there's been an epidemic these last 2 weeks, and one of the sport's most hatred, dejecting, futile, doltish, nonsensical outcomes took place these last 2 Sundays, with the Hawks versus the Cards and the Bengals versus the Skins. Of course, I'm talking about the tie. There's been 2 in the last 2 weeks. I can't emphasize that enough. I would like to start with the Hawks tie first, because this wasn't no ordinary tie. When I say that, I kind of look back on the recent ties in the game. The Panthers versus the Bengals a couple years ago, 37-37. Green Bay, Minnesota, 26-26. San Fran and the Rams, 24-24. And what these scores should tell you is that there were average to below average defensive games. All those teams had good defenses at the time, but for whatever reason, they got scored on above their average points allowed. I guarantee that through the season. And the Hawks game was truly special, and I personally liked it. I loved watching a defensive battle between the 2 defensive juggernauts, and I would argue that they're the top 2 defenses in the league right now. But I'm pretty sure no one's happy with a game ending in a tie. Not the fans, not the owners, not the coaches, not the players. I mean, come on, Roger. This isn't soccer. NFL games simply cannot end in a tie. Especially if you're trying to promote this shit in London. College overtime would have been epic for London fans to watch between the Cincy and the Redskins. And I've been saying this for years, because as seldom as it happens, when it does happen, it seems to just screw everything up. The standings, just everything. No one's happy with a tie, and they shouldn't have to be forced to watch a tie. And all they have to do is adapt and amend their overtime rules to fit the college overtime rules. It's the easiest way to do it. I know they've amended it over the years, over the last couple of years, but it's just to kind of mimic it, but it's just simply not enough. They just need to go full bore and adopt the whole system, really. And if you don't know what the college overtime rules, I'll explain them quickly. And I promise you'll be on board with them. So in college, it's like a sudden death overtime scheme, and there's still a coin toss to choose offense, defense, but defense is more sought out to be on defense first than offense, like it is NFL, because you have the chance to match or better the possession outcome of the team that had the ball first. So if they got like a field goal, you can get a field goal and it would go to double overtime, or you can get a touchdown and win. And if they got a touchdown, then you would have to have a touchdown, and this makes being on defense better, because now you're in 4-down territory every first down. But they start at the 25. The defense's 25-yard line, so there can be a max of like 2 first downs. So if NFL adopted it, I think they should move it back to the 30, just because, like, if there's no yards gained, it would make for a longer field goal and whatnot. And really, it puts more emphasis on teams to go out and put together more of a better defense and for these type of situations. Also, another thing in college overtime that's really dope. They can go as long as it needs to go. I think in 2003, Arkansas and Kentucky went like 7 overtimes. So I obviously wasn't there, or didn't watch it, but it was probably very intense. But generally, there's like a 2 point conversion rule that tends to keep them under quadruple overtimes, and that states like after the third overtime period, I think it's the third over, yeah. No, sorry, it's the second overtime period. Then teams must go for two after their touchdown. So really, that rule makes it so the overtimes doesn't last a whole nother game. It's the most plausible, most right way, most fair way to do things. So football games doesn't end in a tie, which is stupid. Simply just need to do it. And speaking of epidemics, the Seahawks offense has looked complete trash lately. And I've given the benefit of the doubt to our offensive line throughout the first half of the year because we're going against some pretty strong defensive lines. But I really thought the Saints game was like their coming out party, their chance to show up and get some confidence rolling and built up. And they just didn't. It was very disappointing to watch. But there was no reason for them not to show up. I can't even name a player on that defensive line, that being the Saints. They're decrepit and old and not very good defensive coaching. Well, actually, there's Nick Fairley on that defensive line, but he's shown to just be an above average D tackle, bouncing around from a couple teams these last 2-3 years or so, from Detroit to St. Louis to New Orleans now. He definitely needs a better supporting cast like he had in Detroit to have an impact. So there was literally no reason our offense shouldn't have done that poorly. And once again, like I've been continuously saying, Jermaine Kearse's inconsistent regular season play far outweighs the bigger moments, especially right now. Like when we don't have a running identity and our run blocking is putrid, our wide receivers just need to step up because we're kind of blending into that more throw first mentality. Oh, back. Homer, Chicago. Nice. Cool. So 5-3. Nice. Or 6-3. So yeah, and getting back to Jermaine Kearse, I've spotted him half-assing, jogging around, not really making any good cuts on routes. One too many plays this year, and frankly, I'm totally done with him. The guy can't get open at all. It's frustrating to watch. I wasn't a big fan of his re-signing, and I know he's a hometown kid, and we didn't sign him for very much, but I feel like we could have done better. So I kind of pointed to my bold statements of, Jermaine Kearse getting let go or reconstructing his contract, trying to trade him or whatnot. But another bold statement and proclamation I think we should do after this year, I believe the time has come to just part ways with this Jimmy Graham project. I know he only has 1 year left, 1.5 years left, until he's like an unrestricted free agent, but if he does become an unrestricted free agent within our offense, and he's still kind of a part of our team that fourth year, we're not going to get much for him, and I don't think we would re-sign him. So by the end of this year, I think we need to trade him and at least get some value back for him. Hopefully he does ball out and show up these next half of the season or whatever. But he can only be so good with our offensive line, and right now our main focus needs to be that offensive line. And the way it is, like if we keep him for the 2017 season, we would owe him another $10 million because he signed that 4-year, $40 million deal. which that 10 million could be used to get a top free agent O lineman, and also pay for like some of Justin Britt's contract in the near future. We have Luke Wilson, who is hurt unfortunately right now, but he's pretty much a prototypical tight end. He blocks fine. He's fast. He's really fast. And he can get open. He's shown that he can take a hit, and he's also shown he's a big, for sure target, like on the third or fourth read for Russell, and they have a good chemistry once he's on the field and has more snaps and repetitions. They seem to really build a rapport throughout the game. You can really see it. And, once Russell buys time, he tends to just kind of bail himself out with Luke Wilson rather than Jimmy Graham. And with our other draftee of Nick Vannett out of Ohio State, I would rather see them put their eggs in the basket with him than their eggs all in the basket with Jimmy Graham. But that's just me. I know I've heard the other side of that coin, and I've heard that Jimmy Graham's gonna mold into this crazy good trade deal, but Pete Carroll doesn't have the best track record with trades. So we have an interesting game that's coming up on Monday night. So we have two factors that works for us. It is on prime time and it's at home. And so those two factors benefit us greatly. I don't know exactly our record, but it's astronomically tilted one way once we play in the primetime games, and our home record speaks for itself. But the Bills, since they've let their offensive coordinator go the third week of the season, they've been kind of on a roll. I know they're 4-4, but they started out very terrible, 0-2, 1-3. And since they got that new offensive coordinator, they're like second in the NFL in rushing yards per game. I think they're like 154 rushing, 155 rushing yards per game, which is pretty good, which is actually really good. But I like that stat for one reason, and it benefits our defense. If anything's going to hold us up in this game, it's our run defense. Because hopefully they'll come in with that same game plan of trying to run it a lot and kind of all those rollouts with Tyrod Taylor. And our run defense just can kind of stay having an impact like they have over the last 2 weeks, because David Johnson didn't have a very good night. Also, Mark Ingram didn't have a good night. He fumbled and was kind of set to very low yards. And I don't know who they put in for him after he fumbled. Tim Hightower, or sorry, I can't remember for sure. But after that, we had two very stout defensive goal line stands where they essentially tried their power sets, and all the power sets really on their side of the 40 or our side of the 40. We kind of shut their run game down, which was nice. So that kind of works in our benefit if they try to run it on us and make Tyrod Taylor throw the ball, because I think he's still a little too young, and he still doesn't have the kind of intangibles that like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, just all these good quarterbacks that kind of look you off or have that deceptive feature about them. With our secondary, we might have a heyday again. So look for like another 2 or 3 turnover game. And if I haven't watched a lot of Bills games this year, but their defense is subpar. I know that for a fact. They're not very good, and like I suspected with the Saints game, I'll give our offense one last hope, one last chance to kind of break out of their shell, break out of this little funk that they're having, and have a big day. I don't think the weather is going to be a part of a factor, and if it is bad weather, it's not going to tilt in our favor because the Bills also have they also play outside in some pretty inclement weather. But I think we have a few more skeletons in our closet that, you know, Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson are kind of putting on with, like, our injuries and our fatigue that guys are having. I think it was like combined these last 2 weeks, Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, and those guys, like, they've played probably 180 snaps or something, 160 plus snaps these last 2 weeks, which is frightening. It should never be that high. And our defense is kind of diminished right now. I don't think Michael Bennett's going to be back. I think he had like microsurgery on his situation, and then Cam Chancellor's still kind of nursing that growing injury. So those are two really big pieces. But Frank Clark really stepped up last week versus the Saints. He had a sack and a half. I think he forced that fumble. I could be wrong, but nevertheless, he had a lot of impactful tackles, and he was getting back there, disrupting the timing between plays, and really showing his presence. And also Cassius Marsh is another good depth piece that we have. I really like him. So with those two coming off the edge, as well as Tony McDaniel in the middle, stuffing that run game, I think we'll be fine. And I think we're just going to give it to him, because doesn't it feel like this is kind of a turning point of how our season's going to go? We can either like bounce back and show everybody that, yes, we're injured and we're not ourselves, but we still can win games in a dominant fashion. But if we don't, we're going to kind of still decline. So I do feel that they feel it's a pivotal game, and we have a little longer time to rest, that extra day and a half or so. So I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty good blowout, like 27-16 or something. So that's my prediction for this upcoming game. And Jimmy Graham and Jermaine Kearse, I'm going to be watching them like a hawk. No pun intended. But they just have to show up in this game. This is my last chance for them. Alright, everybody. Well, I'm going to get back and finish watching this World Series game. It's turned in to be quite a game, quite entertaining. So thank you all again for tuning in, watching, and listening. Don't forget to hit this little watermark to subscribe, like the video, and share it. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.